time to take a little break from the NFL season. I know everybody is a big NFL fan. I'm excited for week 3. I'm sickly excited for the Thursday night football game. But what better way to enjoy this Thursday afternoon than taking a little break away from NFL season and hopping into some NBA best ball. I've been working all morning on the rankings on the website, spikeweek.com. They are not up to date just yet, but very soon I'll be getting them updated as soon as I'm done here. I never realized, having never really done super thoughtful, in-depth NBA best ball rankings before, never quite realized just kind of how lengthy of a process that it is. So we've been working through it, but we're almost done. I actually have the DraftKings top 200 and the DraftKings positional rankings done, and I just need to polish up Underdog, and then we'll be able to use those rankings from the website. And then the next step will be working on a CSV for everybody to download and use in their drafts, like the draft that we're going to do today. But that's it for housekeeping. Thank you guys for joining as always. I'm super pumped. Every time I start to think about the different kind of strategies and different ways to approach these NBA drafts, I get more excited. It's such a fascinating space with, very little that we know about, even like how to construct teams, basic things like how many players of each position to take, like what types of players should we be taking? Should we be leaning more towards a lot of these young teams? Should we be, my general strategy is often leading away from like some of these veterans on really good teams. But that in turn means you're fading a lot of the best players in the NBA. And that doesn't necessarily feel comfortable. How much should we invest in these really bad teams? The Thunder, the Magic, etc. How much should we invest in those teams? How much should we be investing in kind of some of I talked about it last draft stream that we did. How much should we be investing in some of the more contingent value type guys? We see that constantly. If you play NBA DFS, you see constantly, like almost right away in the season, but at least, a few weeks in, a month in, 2 months in, right? X player is out, whether it's injury, rest, whatever. And so we're analyzing who benefits from that situation. And it happens all the time, right? Guys are benefiting from Kawhi Leonard being out. Steph Curry's resting. LeBron is resting. The Raptors are tanking down the stretch. So Malachi Flynn is awesome. Gary Trent Jr. It gets a boost. Chris Boucher gets a boost, right? How do we build some of those things in? How do we value all of these players based on all these different variables? It's so different than I think any other sport, and the best ball aspect makes it very, very different, right? In season-long NBA, it's not that these things don't matter, but I don't need to draft the guy that, is a lot more contingent value based. But in the 16th round of one of these drafts, I'm not really counting on that player's score for quite a while in my lineup. And so taking shots on different players at the ends of drafts can make sense. And so anyway, you guys probably know all of this, but I think it's a just wildly fascinating space right now. And I'm super, super excited to kind of just keep firing these NBA drafts. I think I have done 20 drafts so far in the $5, and I hope to get to 150, and I expect that they will add more contests, trying to see how much of this $5 one that they can fill. It's 5% full right now. We're a month away from the season, so I'll be interested to see what additional contests we get. But let's go ahead and hop in one of these $5 drafts. I'm sure you're sick of hearing me talk anyway. 3 more spots. Let's see if we can get this filled really quickly. 2 more. found doing this, doing these rankings has also been a really helpful exercise. And what I would recommend is, even once I get these rankings up, that I appreciate if you trust me, but obviously not taking everything I do as gospel, and kind of combing through them for your own purposes, and just kind of seeing the big thing that I've seen. We talked about it a little bit in the Discord. If you are not in the Discord, I couldn't possibly recommend it more. There's tons of sharp people in there already talking through different players, different team situations, draft strategies, and everything that have been amazing. It's 100% free. Just go to spikeweek.com and click Discord in the banner. But I have found this process of thinking through, talking through player rankings to be super helpful in how I can plan out kind of my drafts, and seeing how the first kind of few rounds go, and understanding, positional depth, positional scarcity, and those types of things, especially as it relates to each site. I've been drafting mostly on Underdog, also because DraftKings drafts take forever to fill, which is unfortunate. But the Underdog position, on each site, players are put at different positions, right? Guard, wing, big, guard, forward, center on DraftKings, and seeing the depth of each position and which players are at different positions, right? So one that always comes to my mind, and I don't know why this is the player that comes to my mind, maybe because I like thinking about the late round players, but on Underdog, Daniel Gafford, center for the Washington Wizards, is a wing player. And as we know, especially after the very top tier of wings, it gets really, really thin. And so on Underdog, that player gets a big boost, because getting a center that you can play at wing, especially a center that's big, a big blocks and steals player, right? We know the scoring for blocks and steals is huge on Underdog, with three points for a block or a steal. Gafford is this guy that, I'm not saying I plan my drafts around, but he is a very intriguing player on Underdog. But knowing that is really important. Also knowing, we talked about this also in the Discord the other day, actually on DraftKings compared to Underdog, the big or center position is crazy thin. So many of the actual centers, or guys that might even be classified as bigs on Underdog, are forwards and you'll see I'm drafting Karl Anthony Towns, a big here, who I'm super, super, super bullish on. I often take at the 104 Tatum or Cat. We can get into a little bit more of that. But anyway, on DraftKings, actually, the center position is wildly thin, and there aren't even that many late round, high quality, potential upside punt options. So that changes things, quite a bit, right? Knowing that position, and you only need to draft one, knowing that, it's not that you only need to draft one. You only have one center spot to fill, 2 utility spots. Now, knowing that is super important. It's a little bit deeper, in my opinion, on Underdog, whereas wing is a little bit weaker on Underdog as well. So just understanding some of these positional things has been, doing drafts. I certainly, there's really only, you can't replicate just actually getting in and doing the drafts and getting experience. I probably have some of my early drafts that I absolutely hate. Some of my early drafts, probably not. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that again, but you have to go through that to start to figure out, how you like to construct teams and what your player targets are. Gafford as a wing is definitely something. I don't know how they stumbled across that one. Most of the time I can at least comprehend why a player is what position he is, but the Gafford one I certainly do not get. messed around with projections. Was interesting who popped, but more interesting who didn't pop. Yeah, that's a really good call. So I don't do my own projections. I do look at some projections, and so much of my process as it relates to rankings and player targets is actually not even as much projections, but it would basically be ranges of outcomes. But even then, the ranges of outcomes as it pertains to projections, I think, are difficult. And so it's a lot more, quite frankly, upside and like player archetype drafting that I do. So like a median projection, possibly even a range of outcomes projection on, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to come up with a very good example here, but Derrick Rose or something like that. Derrick Rose probably might even project far better than his ADP, but given the archetype of player that he is, whether it be age, whether it be on a team that's going to be winning. Granted, we'll see how the Knicks play out. So, like I said, maybe not the best example, but you get what I'm saying. A player archetype that, at his age, or Kevin Huerter, right? We talked about Duncan Robinson last time. Those types of players just get dropped way, way down my rankings because I just don't see how they are going to win you anything. You know what I mean? Versus, you guys have probably seen that I draft a lot of some of these late round young guys. I mentioned Malachi Flynn. I really like Malachi Flynn. Let me see here. Dang, Vooch would have been nice. I have been taking too much Randall. I really want to make sure I have my requisite number of LaMelo. So I'm going to take LaMelo, who I'm also super, super high on. I'm higher in the rankings than market. Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like kind of lazy when I talk about like that process, but I want to bet on those, the younger players, in whether it be uncertain situations, or it could even be possibly like almost like a certain situation, but where they have the potential to take a step forward and really be like a league winner for me. Like finding a guy in the 15th round who really should be a 11th round pick really doesn't do anything for you. Because if you're using that 11th round pick score frequently over your top 6 or 7 round guys, something probably went really wrong for you and you weren't going to win anyway. You might even still be able to like win this 12-man league. But you're probably not winning one of these big tournaments. You know what I mean? I want to find the guys late that like far, far, far exceed their cost, and probably are guys that are getting better as the season goes on. You know what I mean? I don't want the late round guy that's like helping me in November. I want the late round guy that's peaking and continuing to get better as the season goes on, getting more playing time, producing more, etc. So that's a massive part of what you'll see in my rankings when I get those updated. And in my, this is tricky. This is tricky. 28. I think I got to do Bam here. I'm gonna try. We're gonna try the double elite big man, and forget about it. I actually did not fade Sterling Shepard. I actually have I have double-digit percentage in NFL on Sterling Shepard. He's not that old, and he's in an uncertain situation. He's actually a fairly, like, it's not all just 20-year-olds. It's not always just 20-year-olds. It's also guys that have the ability, like Sterling Shepard had the ability to earn a ton of targets in an offense that was uncertain. Here's Jimmy's a really good talking point, because I am one of the world's biggest Jimmy Butler fans, like one of my favorite players in the NBA. I'm a little bit down on him this year, I think, but I'm also like, part of that is Bam, because Bam might be my favorite player in the NBA, and I think Bam is just on this superstar trajectory. And Jimmy, is the kind of guy that we know is not going to play every game. Now, they're a little bit more thin this year, and so they might need him to play a little bit more. They bring in Kyle Lowry to take some of the ball handling away from him. I know they had Dragic before, so it's not that big of a difference. But I just think this team is going to be good. I don't expect that they're going to need Jimmy to play every single game. And so I have knocked Jimmy a little bit. I'm like fairly close to like consensus on Jimmy, but maybe a touch lower, basically. So like at the wing position there, he kind of falls almost into this like little bit of no man's land right there, right? Edwards goes around similar to him, right? Levine, I don't love Levine either. I think it's this kind of this no man's land where I just typically like players at these other positions. And so Jimmy is a really difficult one for me because I know how good he is. I know how productive he is. He's obviously an awesome player for fantasy. Steals and blocks are pretty good for him. But I have concerns about, a 2-3 turn pick on Jimmy. Let me see. Agree projections are just 100%. There, I wasn't trying to, and if I didn't make it clear, I wasn't trying to say projections are not, part of the process. They absolutely are. I think I'm not an NBA projections expert. I'm not even a fantasy NBA expert, but I don't think anybody is an expert in this best ball space. And so what I'm trying to apply kind of general strategic concepts, not even as it relates to like specific NBA players, but how do I win this league? And I think, something I've been thinking a lot about is just how few of the players that you draft enter your starting lineup on a given week and what that means for late round picks. I think that's a huge part of this, that maybe the market isn't. See, this is such a bad range. My goodness. Jalen Green, 44. Nice. See, I shouldn't have taken Bam because now I'm still gonna try out this 3 elite big thing. Normally I would really only want to go 2, but I want to test this out because I've really gotten on to Nurk here of late. I've really gotten on to it is. I kind of wish I wouldn't have taken Bam now, but that's okay. I'm obviously not taking any more bigs, so I'm going to load up volume at wing. So anyway. No, so like if we think about in NFL, most of you guys have probably played NFL best ball, right? You need 8 starters, quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, flex to fill your starting lineup every single week out of 18 picks that you make. So that's what 40-something percent, 44% or whatever, if that's my math. In this, 2 guards on Underdog, 2 guards, 2 wings, 1 big, 1 utility, flex. So 6 out of your 16. That's less positions that I need to fill. And so in theory, at least, again, early on in the season, like these dudes that I'm drafting right now are filling all of those spots, right? Here's another dude I'm like crazy high on, KPJ. I am trying to think about that concept and think about how that relates to picks beyond a certain round, right? Like I only need 6 starters every single week. And so if Kevin Huerter is ever entering my lineup, that's probably a really bad sign as to what happened to my early round picks. And if my early round picks go down, I'm really in trouble. So I want to take more swings because you can be wrong more in this because you're going to have 10 guys that don't make your starting lineup. So I'm just trying to think through that general idea. I'm also, like I said, age model, those kinds of things. And also this kind of idea of winning the flex, right? And that's why I'm still thinking through, not like at this exact moment, but general strategy around like the 3 big man thing when you take too early. I think an interesting strategy, which we've also discussed in the Discord, is literally only taking 2 elite bigs and only taking 2 bigs, just loading up on all this volume elsewhere. I think when you get to a spot like where I was, I think the big was the best player. And so I understand I'm not going to be able to use one of their scores every single week, but also I should be able to use the combination of these 3 guys to win the flex every single week. And now I'm going to take like 8 wings or something like that, knowing that I'm going to be bad at the wing. So I'm trying to make up for the lack of quality at wing with a bunch of quantity. And in theory, that big position not only locked down my big, but it locked down my flex too, right? So thinking through some of those different things. I've essentially only done NFL best ball because I'm not a big hoop head, but I almost think that may be an advantage because I'm not familiar. Yeah, so I am a big hoop head. I love the NBA. I love basketball, but I'm definitely not. I mean, like most people, I've played a lot more fantasy football than I have fantasy basketball. I have been in some fantasy NBA leagues for a little while, and I've obviously played a ton of best ball. That's why we're here. Spike Week. That's why Spike Week exists. But I do think, to your point, I'm not this like crazy experienced NBA fantasy player, seasonal wise. Like I play a ton of DFS, but I almost think having done the NFL thing allows me to bring in the structural ideas and, like I said, like the archetype ideas and apply them to this sport and gain an edge that way. So I agree with you. It is. I totally agree. I like the 3 elite center on DK because you can start all of them, right? That's the issue with this 3 elite big structure that I have here is I can't in any single week. I know that one of my top 5 round picks is not going to be in my starting lineup, and that's absolutely like an issue. The other issue becomes like if like I can't take any more bigs, right? So if the best player on the board moving forward, like if let's say Draymond, if Draymond were to have fallen right there, like I basically can't take Draymond. Do you know what I mean? And there goes Keldon. God damn it, Matt. All right, so I'm just going to take another guard that I love, Spencer Dinwiddie. I'm very high on. Yeah, see, it gets so bad. Wing gets so bad. But I do think it's interesting to do something like this and punt off a position, right? The 0 RB type thing. When you draft 0 RB in football, you're not doing it because you are going to start every single wide receiver that you draft early on, right? You might not draft a running back until around 10 or 11. And so by that time you've drafted 7 or 8 wide receivers. You can't start them all, but you're trying to, combine all of their weekly spikes throughout the course of a season and then capitalize like on the fragility of this one position. Wing isn't necessarily like fragile in NBA, but it is weak. And so when you miss out on the top, you can sacrifice the, like right now, I can't start all of these guys, right? But I can sacrifice that because in theory, if they're all hits throughout the course of the season, their scores are all kind of coming together to give me big flex and guard. I'm smashing. And now I need to hit on some wings that really, exceed value. Yeah, man. the wing dead zone is real. That is a real thing. We're going to have to start coining that one. I like that. Oh, goodness. All right. You guys are just going to make me keep punting off wing here, huh? I'm also very in on Garland. There was something I read. It's been maybe a couple months or something like that. That was some current NBA superstars that were playing against Garland in the offseason, basically saying like he was the toughest cover of anybody. Like just like current NBA players. And that you take that with a grain of salt. It's hype pieces that we don't even know that they mean anything. But I think Garland is another one of the young guys that could take a really, really big step. A really big step as the point guard, as the quarterback of a young team. I really like anchor wing. Like I don't want to do this with guard. Basically, I don't want to treat guard like running back. I don't think, just because it's the deepest position with the most options that can not only the most like quality options to enter into your lineup, but the most early options, most late options, most middle options. Guard is just the most. Guard is like wide receiver almost, kind of, not the perfect parallel. But wing is so top heavy and then like falls off the map. And center is not that different. Big is not that different from that. It's a little bit better, like I said, here on Underdog, and a little bit worse on DraftKings. And so I do think taking like a sort of fragile approach to a position like wing can be really beneficial, right? I'm going to be taking 9 upside shots or whatever. I'm exaggerating. I'm going to be taking, I might not actually even be exaggerating, but I'm going to be taking 8 upside shots on wings the rest of the way. In this 0 wing build, but in an anchor wing build, like, you're not going to be using that player in the flex. And you have, like you said, like Andrew said, KD locked in, or Tatum locked in, or whoever, Paul George locked in. And you're like, I'm using KD's, KD's never going to rest. KD's going to play the whole season. I'm using his score the whole season. Now I just need to make 6 picks and find that next guy that fills that spot. Because then I also have, I've also spent a lot of draft capital on guard and big in terms of quality, early draft capital. I'm a big fan of that. But NBA is so, like I said, this is also fascinating, and also it's new to me. It's new to everybody. But thinking through that, like at almost each position, I don't think it's unreasonable to fade early guards and do like a 0 guard build. I think you could do a 0 any position, or an anchor any position. But as long as you're taking some sort of fairly fragile approach, I think you should be doing something fairly fragile or something extreme. I've done drafts where it's a lot more balanced or whatever, and I just find that they're not the ideal. They don't build in the ideal upside that I really want. It's not that you can't win like with a balanced roster. If you hit on all the players, you can win with any construction. But I think no one is doing, like we talk about that in NFL, where people do some sorts of 0 running back, anchor running back, robust running back, whatever. But like nobody is doing any of that in NBA. So that just makes it even more advantageous, because if you do that 100 times over 100 drafts, like you just need to hit on one of them. You know what I mean? Find a couple, get all your anchor studs and they all smash early at those positions, and then find that breakout wing or whatever. See, I actually kind of like Kuz, especially in this structure. Another thing, we talked about this on the last draft. It's like I have Spencer Dinwiddie. It's like if drafting Kuz when you have like a Dinwiddie, but you don't have Beal, is kind of correlating that contingent value. You know what I mean? If Beal gets traded, which I'm not expecting, but if Beal gets traded or Beal misses time or whatever, having those guys that simultaneously benefit, especially when it's in a 0 wing team, I think is pretty interesting. Grab 3 elite centers, so you drain the weak center pool holding on. Yep, exactly, right? It's so powerful because it helps your team. Because you don't have to draft very many big centers then on DraftKings, which is inherently valuable at a weak position. You can play all of them, and we know centers are incredibly valuable fantasy assets, right? That's why they're like always the most popular flex options in DFS. That's why some of them are the most expensive options, the chalkiest options in DFS, right? We know what a center can do from a fantasy perspective, even not great ones. So the great ones can really be huge fantasy scores. And like you said, you dry out the pool. You starve the beast. Now here's one where I'm going to take an old guy that is not sexy. But I do, and that's one thing. I do want some form of, I don't want to run out of wing options where I'm not getting any early season points, because I do, week 1 points matter as much as whatever week, week 15 points matter in terms of winning the league. So you do need some form. It's the same thing with like zero running back. I can't draft all handcuffs. I can't draft all backups and contingency or flyers, upside flyers. I do need some form of points early in the season. You may not need a ton, but I need some form of points early in the season. Great question. Why draft now as opposed to 2 weeks later when you'll have more information? Because once we get more information, all the quote unquote values will soak up, right? So like, let's take the Ben Simmons thing as an example. Ben Simmons has obviously demanded a trade and said he's never going to play again for the Sixers. And so you see, actually, what perfect timing. Holy cow. It's like I planned that. Tyrese Maxey goes, right? Tyrese Maxey goes. If Simmons gets traded and they don't bring back like a valuable guard, like Maxey is a smash. Right, Maxey is a smash. If the Raptors trade Goran Dragic and Malachi Flynn is the starting point guard for the Toronto Raptors in 2 weeks, right now you can get him in one of the last rounds. You won't be able to get him then. So it's a little bit of a balance between, yes, I'm going to continue drafting all the way up until the season, but having some drafts right now, you'll be able to get some guys. Like when we get more information, their ADP is going to rise or fall. And so, I mean, another example is Kawhi. Kawhi goes really high in these drafts, like super high in these drafts. I still don't know what's going on. I can't, someone's got to make heads or tails of this for me because I can't figure it out. Like, I don't know that Kawhi's going to play this year at all. And he's like a 3rd round pick or something. So once we get information where it's like confirmed, Kawhi's not playing this year. Kawhi's at least not playing for the first 4 months. Well, he's going to plummet. And my advantage where every draft I do, one of my opponents is drafting 3rd round Kawhi Leonard, that goes away, So it's balancing. Yes, there's more uncertainty, but there's more potential to find value right now. Maxey, R. Jackson, yeah, those are good. I like that. I like that tier of guard, but perfect example, that tier of guard around a pick 100, right, has good picks. Upside pick, whether it's I like the Clippers guys because of the Kawhi thing, right? If Kawhi doesn't play, Reggie Jackson and Eric Bledsoe look like good value picks to me, right? I love Maxey. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, we know there's uncertainty around that situation and exactly how much he's going to play, who's going to do whatever. But another upside pick. But those guys exist there around pick 100 or later at guard and at wing. Look, we're looking at Tim Hardaway, Lauri Markkanen, Rui. It's bad. Really bad. Jason, Scotty Barnes is going 112 now? What happened here? What's going on? I don't like this anymore. I don't like this draft. You guys are killing me. I guess I gotta go get my guy here if you guys are gonna take all of them, because I don't really like any of these wings here. Oh, look at that. 2 hours ago, Daniel Gafford expected to start at center. There's another one about why should we draft early. I have so much Gafford. And now we get a report. Gafford's going to start at center to start the season. And he's going at pick 136 as a wing on Underdog. He won't be going there. He's not going to be going there for all that much longer. This draft is wild, dude. I would also say it's much sharper. it's much sharper than a lot of the other drafts that I do, because I'm able to like actually get a lot of these guys closer to, their current value, their current ADP. And that is absolutely not the case. Not the case in this one. Like I said, got to go get Gafford. If you wanted Maxey, you had to go get him. Yes, some of the ADPs have really changed on these guys. Really, really changed. Remind me the CMC situation when he came back from injury, like in season drafts. Is that what you're talking about? Or just in general? But in general, yeah, capitalizing on uncertainty. Capitalizing on uncertainty. It's a little bit different in NBA because it's not like, players will get hurt before the season, but not to the same extent. Oh, yeah. Oh, in DFS terms. Sorry, I was thinking in best ball terms. Yeah, absolutely. The first game back, that CMC came back. All right, I'm taking another one of my dudes here. Again, slight reach, but I know you guys, and he's not going to come back, and it's not like I'm missing out much here at wing or at guard. Woof. See, I do still like some of these bigs. That's the other kind of hard part about going really heavy at the big position. I think this tier is fine. Not so much Wiseman, but Pirtle, Wendell Carter, some of these guys. Kelly Olynyk, I like those guys. But yeah, to the CMC point, right? We even got some news that was like, I don't know if he's going to play full snaps, and then he does CMC things. And then again, in NFL terms, like this year, now some of these guys it hasn't worked out, but like you got really good closing line value on Rondale Moore. There's a good example that has worked out. Just early in draft season, he's a rookie. People haven't quite honed in on his exact value, and he's like a 15th round pick in fantasy. Now look at him, and then he got eventually, if you were drafting at the end, he was like an 8th or 9th round pick. But if you drafted early, you were able to get this awesome pick late. And that's part of what I'm doing. Like, that's why you see the Josh Giddey thing. I think Giddey's going to start. Zach Lowe also thinks Giddey is going to start. I kind of think Giddey's going to be, the de facto point guard. I don't think they want Shea to be quite as ball dominant as he was last year. Now, Shea's their best player. Shea's their max player. Shea's their superstar. I'm not saying that they're like going to take the ball out of Shea's hands a ton, but I do think they need a secondary ball handler. And I think Giddey is a wing here. And he's kind of this weird player, right? But I think I would argue he's much more of a guard positionally than he will be a wing. He's more so a point guard. And so being able to get a guy that's actually going to, normally when we're talking about these wings, right? We're talking about Joe Ingles. We're talking about Kevin Huerter, off-ball players. And I think Giddey is valuable. Giddey also is another guy who used to be going in the 150s, 160s in ADP. And now you see his ADP is, let me scroll, 138. So same thing, another proponent to drafting early is you can get some of those guys before the market adjusts to what their actual cost should be. You guys are definitely making this one tougher on me, though, to get my guys. Boy, that is a uncomfortable looking group of wings. Kyle Kuzma, Harrison Barnes, Daniel Gafford, and Josh Giddey. Gonna need some run good with that group of wings. But I don't hate it. I don't hate this team. Like I said, I don't know how I feel about maybe swapping in a wing, but you also get into that weird spot where those wings even in the 4th, 5th round are like they're really just priced up because of the positional scarcity type thing. It's tricky. Wing is such a tricky position. There goes Wendell Carter. That's nice. 138. I guess I can look at some guards a little bit here. Maybe not. All right, we're gonna keep on this. I don't know if Brandon Clark is gonna bounce back, but without Joe Val in town, I think there's a path to him, being the starting center on Memphis. And again, you get to if he was a big, like I would probably never be draft. I don't want to say never. I would rarely be drafting Brandon Clark. I think, but the upside is that he's playing 30 minutes a night as a starting center on the Grizzlies. And we know how productive he is fantasy-wise in his minutes when not playing alongside Joe Val. He's another guy that's a fairly priority target for me on Underdog, specifically being a wing. This is real gross, though, guys. Real gross. Yikes. Just look at the bigs. Olynyk is falling, I think. You want to talk about difference in ADP on sites? Kelly Olynyk goes at 158 here. I think I was looking at DraftKings earlier today, and he's in the 70s. Maybe in the 70s. Neither of these guys are going to come back. I think I'm going to take Reddish, but I think it's flipping a coin between those two guys. I could be jaded by what we saw in the playoffs when Reddish came back, but I think he has the potential to step into, like, I think some people had written him off with all their depth of young wings, right? Herder, Hunter, etc. They brought Collins back. I think Reddish could kind of emerge from that group. And then again, you get the contingent value and all that kind of stuff. Same page. I do like Jaden McDaniels, though, too. Jaden McDaniels has two possible things going for him. I actually don't know how much value he would gain going to the Sixers if he were in a Ben Simmons trade. But I also think if they don't trade for Ben Simmons, he's not going to be a high usage player, but again, a good steals, blocks player, just a young player that I think is pretty good and is getting better. And so I just like to bet on those kinds of guys, right? I'm not projecting Jaden McDaniels to be incredibly fantasy useful, but we're talking about a 13th, 14th, 15th round pick. Same thing with Cam Reddish. I just want like potentially emerging young players and just kind of let everything else work its way out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know if Cam Reddish is going to be useful at all for fantasy, but I just want to bet on a young player that can continue to emerge versus, no offense, Blake Griffin. Like, I don't think Blake Griffin is really ever going to do it for you. Just being the older veteran player on the best team in the NBA. Yeah, which is also funny. One would argue this is nice. Kelly Olynyk's ADP is 69 on DraftKings, 158 on Underdog. And I like Kelly. I think 158 is actually way too cheap. I think he might be one of the most undervalued players on Underdog. But pick 69 is absolutely egregious. What are we doing? Even with how thin center is. Like, it's a little pricey for old KO. And I'm a huge KO fan. for fantasy. He's whatever in real life NBA. Okay, let me see where I stand. 4-6-3. Okay, now it's time to start thinking about guard again. I saw my guy Malachi went. You guys are the worst. Can't get any of my priority targets in this draft. Let's see what the guys behind me have. 6 wing, 4-6-3, 5-6-2, 5-4-4. Matt, don't do it. Don't take one of my guys. I know you're taking a wing here, but don't take one of my guys. Okay, you're not. All right. Taking Chuma. Again, you can clearly see my draft strategy for the most part in terms of these young guys. And Chuma is just another guy that is a talented young player on a team. You know, they're loaded with bodies, but they also don't really have a ton of bodies like him. Wing play, you know, athletic wings that can create, or at least create a little bit. So same thing. I just think even though the situation is maybe a little bit murky, he can ascend. You know, he just has to earn the opportunity in Orlando. And there's more opportunity in Orlando than anywhere, even than OKC. You know, because at least OKC has Shea. Orlando has, you know, they have a bunch of bodies, but it's these guards. They could use a valuable wing, and I think Chuma is a really nice upside wing pick. There's another good, nice upside late big that I like there. Let's take a look at these guards left to see, like Fultz, Rubio. See, like those are also guys that like I could end up being very wrong. All right, here's my other guy I keep standing for, Precious. I love Precious. Another super productive guy, right? Traded in the Lowry deal to Toronto. Seems a little bit murky in terms of what his exact role is, right? They obviously have Boucher, Pascal, and Kem Birch in the front court, but I personally think he's going to carve out a real role. Like he's going to play, period, in my opinion. How much of an exact early season role will he have? I don't know, but I think he can earn a really, really real role. And he's a productive fantasy player. And again, a guy who's more of a big that you get to play at wing. So Precious is one of my highest priority targets right now, because also to the point about like, why are you drafting right now? If we get to camp and they're like, yeah, we're going to start Boucher and Precious in the front court because Siakam's out to start the year, everybody's going to be like, oh my God, why is Precious going in the second to last round or the last round? So I'm trying to scoop him up as much as I can right now. That being said, Orlando takes Kem Birch, and I think Kem Birch is a reasonable pick too. Unfortunately, Kem Birch is a big. There's Xavier Tillman, another, you know, the Xavier Tillman's the arbitrage, you know, the fade my Brandon Clark pick, and Tillman's actually the starting center. And you get him at a wing. So just some of these guys, that's the other thing I would do when I go, if you go through rankings, go through projections or whatever it is that your process is to kind of just get familiar with the player pool and these drafts, is looking at some of these players and where they are positionally. Because when you can get these guys that, you know, are centers, bigs, whatever, playing wing, it's huge. It's such a huge boost to their upside. I just saw that. I just saw it yesterday. I don't know when it came out. I just saw this Wiggins thing. So if you haven't seen this, Andrew Wiggins thing came out and said he's not getting the vaccine, which is whatever. I'm not here to discuss that. But that there's potential issues with him playing in home games not being vaccinated. I need to read into it some more because I only saw a tweet. I didn't read an article or anything like that. I just saw a tweet and it made me laugh. So I don't have a ton of information on it. But I mean, Andrew Wiggins is kind of like a so-so value as it is right now. And so I'm not particularly excited to draft him anyway. And now if he's going to be missing games because of this whole fiasco, certainly doesn't make me feel any more inclined to take Andrew Wiggins. What a mess, man. All right, I need to take a fifth. I need to take another guard here. Speaking of Andrew Wiggins not playing, there's Jordan Poole. Poole and Shake are pretty interesting to me. I'm a pretty big Shake fan. But I'm going to go Poole. I think Poole, some of the early reports are really nice on Poole that he is looking like he's going to start. Poole's going to start. It's early, so we'll see if that plays itself out. But Poole took such a big leap last year from a really, really bad rookie season, really bad, to really, really good second season. So I'm kind of excited for Poole. Not the world's best fantasy asset, but also if Steph misses, we saw what he does fantasy wise without Steph. I am also interested in Shake for the same reasons that we're interested in Maxey. Like I think Maxey's clearly the better bet between the two and the higher upside bet. But who is also to say that Shake doesn't start or get a big role if Simmons were to get moved, or when Simmons gets moved. Yeah, and Nurse does same thing that Chris Finch does with Cat, who I ironically drafted, likes to kind of invert their offenses. And so you'll see Cat playing on the perimeter a lot, right? Ibaka did that a lot. Gasol did that a lot. And Boucher does that playing on the perimeter. So even if whoever you want to call the 4 or the 5, he likes to play the big man on the perimeter. And we know that's what Boucher wants to do. So who fits perfect alongside? I mean, Kem Birch fits fine in that too. But who fits next to Boucher in that? And I think Precious can guard on the perimeter. So he's a great rebounder. I think he's a really good fit next to Boucher. Or if they want to play small and play Siakam, when Siakam comes back, playing Siakam and Precious together, I don't think that's unreasonable either. So yeah, that was a fun draft. I am going to pull up that team really quick just to walk through to kind of talk about really briefly. I don't want to gloss over kind of some of the structural things. Obviously, we fully discussed kind of the three elite bigs versus 2 elite bigs. I think I still kind of prefer the 2 thing, but also I don't think we should be unwilling to do something like this. Like I said, I'm really high on Nurk. There's some really good a Nurk quote basically with Chauncey in town. I think Stotts was so unwilling to play Nurk big minutes, and Nurk is kind of hinting that Chauncey is going to unlock that minute ceiling for Nurk. And again, we know how productive Nurk is fantasy wise. And so if you're going to get 34, 35 minutes a night from Nurk, I mean, if he stays healthy, he is going to absolutely crush. Cat is, to me, just an absolute smash. And I'm super bullish on Bam. And then taking these, elite, call them elite, I guess, borderline fringe elite guards, these four guards to fill out my 2 guard spots, and then just fire it off with volume at wing, right? I actually really like this kind of structure in a team. So, whether you prefer 2 elite bigs, 3 elite bigs, whatever, I think whether you prefer elite wings, or I've taken a ton of Tatum. I've taken Paul George, Julius Randle. I've taken some of the elite wings. But I think the general premise is that we should be taking some sort of extreme approach to these drafts and not just drafting straight balanced through. Okay, I took a guard last round. Now I need a wing. I took a wing last round. Now I need a big. I think that we can really gain big edges through structure because, I mean, nobody is doing it in these NBA drafts. Nobody is doing it. So, all right, guys. Like I said, at the top, polishing up these rankings. I think I got to go walk the dogs after this. So forgive me if they're not up right away. But they'll be up tonight for both DraftKings and Underdog. Updates to the positional rankings, and then a top 200 for both DraftKings and Underdog. So if you want to draft off, just a straight rankings list, you will find, let me tell you, there are huge differences between where I have players ranked and where their ADP lies. So it is, and I think, even if you tweak some of the rankings and stuff that I've done, I think you'll find the same thing. The ADP is pretty wild in these. So anyway, I'm going to continue to do these drafts every single week, and hopefully a few more than that leading up until the season. But for now, for me, and for my dogs that I'm about to go walk, and for all these scrubby wings that I just drafted, I will see you guys in another draft next week.